Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to Temple Emeth and to the Rabbi Louis J. Siegel Sanctuary here in Teaneck, New Jersey. If you're watching us on live stream, I say Bruchim Habayim to you. Welcome to our service. If you have a copy of Mishkan Tefillah at home, our Siddur, now is the perfect time to bring it to your computer or your device so you can follow along with each and every prayer and song and page number of our service today. Also, if you're watching us on live stream, now is the perfect time to post something in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. It can be your name, your location, or apropos of our theme this evening, it can be a memory that you have of Temple Emeth anytime in the last 75 years. Anything you post in the chat or comment section can be seen by others, and in that way we form bonds of virtual community together. If you're watching us on live stream, I do want to apologize. We're doing all the normal things up here in terms of talking and singing and playing music. It might be a little fuzzy for you. That is due to what is known in the business as technical difficulties. So we apologize for that. But we hope you can hear us well enough to appreciate all that we are bringing to you this evening. For those of you in the sanctuary, Shabbat Shalom. It is my pleasure to welcome you. And you know where to find your copy of Mishkan Tefillah right in front of your seat. And so I encourage you to take a copy of Mishkan Tefillah as we've gathered in honor of Temple Emeth's 75th anniversary. So I want to speak just a little bit about the events that brought us to this day. It was the fall of 1947. The war had been over for 2 years, and a period of great change was underway both at home and abroad. Following the war, Jews began to find homes in the suburbs. Cities like New York, Paterson, Hoboken, Jersey City, and Newark were much less attractive to soldiers who were returning home. Instead, they had their eyes on suburbs like Teaneck, which grew by over 33% in the 1940s, outpacing Bergen County's overall growth rate of 31%. The first year of what would be known as the baby boom had finished, so it was no wonder that the Reformed Jews of this area sought to create the county's first Reformed temple. Until then, the area's Jewish center was Paterson, with its kosher establishments, Jewish-owned factories and businesses, and synagogues dating back to the 19th century. The population in Paterson at this time, the Jewish population in Paterson at this time, was around 35,000, and there were dozens of social service organizations to meet the needs of the community. By contrast, around the same time, there were only 20,000 Jews in all of Bergen County. That's not to say there was no Jewish communal life here. The Teaneck Jewish Center had its first service in 1932. Rather, it is to say that with substantial growth and lots of room to keep growing, Bergen County's Jewish community was ready to open their next chapter by opening the doors of the Bergen County Reformed Temple. It was at this season, right around Hanukkah, that we received our charter from the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now called the Union for Reform Judaism, bringing us into the family of organized Reform Judaism. It was groundbreaking, figuratively, and eventually literally, as the congregation eventually built its own building. And amid this excitement locally, there was both hope and tension on the other side of the world. Within weeks of the founding of Bergen County Reformed Temple, the United Nations voted to accept the partition plan and to give legitimacy to the Jewish people's aspirations for statehood. Needless to say, it was an exciting time, a time of growth and opportunity, a time of resilience and building. Tonight, we honor what our founders in 1947 accomplished. We reflect on their legacy, and we embrace the challenge to create a bright future for this congregation. Our service will have special music and a tribute by 2 past presidents, and the festivities will continue even after the service is over. I welcome you, and I thank you for coming as we begin our service. At this time, we turn to the lighting of our Shabbat candles, which is found on page 120 and preceded by an opening reading. For the honor of lighting the Shabbat candles, we call upon Judy Fox.
These lights are only flickering flames, yet flames illumine our uncertain steps. Flames purify and renew, soften and refine. They brighten and make warm. Flames remind us of Sabbaths long past, and of the beauty that delight in our hearts. May they inspire us to work for the great Shabbat of peace. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
time with our Kiddush for Shabbat Evening, which is found in the Siddur on page 123, preceded by an opening reading. For the honor of leading us in Kiddush, we call upon David Fox. Please rise if you are able for the Kiddush.
As evening falls, we give thanks for the blessings of the past week, for life and strength, for word and rest, for home, love, and community. As we enjoy this bounty, may we be inspired to bring goodness into the lives of others. We raise a cup of wine in gratitude for the miracle of creation and for the gift of this day of rest. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotov v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat ha'tov v'ahav v'hatzon infilanu, zikron le'ma'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom tefillah le'mikrei kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta eltanu kitashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat tzarchcha le'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to call upon Cantor Tillum, who is taking a break from her sabbatical, ironically, a break from her break, to be here on this occasion to speak about the music she has selected for this evening. Welcome back, Cantor. We are so glad you are with us this evening.
Shabbat Shalom. It's wonderful to see you, Rabbi, and everybody here tonight. For those of you who have asked me that question over and over again, and we'll ask later, how is your sabbatical? I have 3 words for you: not over yet. However, I felt it was so important for me to be here with my Temple family tonight to begin the celebration of Temple Emeth's 75th year. And when I decided on my sabbatical date, I insisted on being here tonight, regardless of timing. This evening, Tom Mustachio and I decided to sing through the decades at Temple Emeth, although not necessarily in order. Many of the melodies we will use tonight are songs that you know, and songs that will bring you back to a familiar time at our congregation. The melodies I have chosen tonight represent a time or memory that is reflected in the music that I have been blessed to sing with you for the past 29 years. Weaving together the rich musical heritage of Reform Judaism, Temple Emeth, and Jewish music as a whole is what I've tried to accomplish tonight in one service. Some of the liturgical music tonight needs its own explanation and an introduction from either Rabbi Serbu or myself. You will hear, of course, well-known melodies of the great composers of synagogue music of the 1800s, Solomon Zolzer and Louis Lewandowski, the composers of the most well-known of liturgical settings for the Torah service, the Kiddush, and so many others. Those are the ones that are popular, and throughout The major movements of Judaism are sung each and every Shabbat. We will touch upon Lazar Weiner's music. He was known for his Yiddish art songs, but in the mid-1900s, Reform synagogues popularized his Shabbat music. His Micha Mocha has always been a favorite here at Temple Emeth, and we'll sing it tonight. We will journey through time, moving into the 70s with one of Jeff Klepper's most well-loved camp songs, After the Silent Prayer. And we certainly can't leave out Debbie Friedman's beloved Misha Berach when we have the opportunity to raise our voices in song, asking God for healing of body and soul. I hope you enjoy and sing along with me as we worship together.
Our opening song is just two familiar words, Shabbat Shalom. But sung to a particular melody, they have a unique resonance with this congregation. The melody was composed by Irving Sruhl-Glick to honor our rabbi, Louis J. Siegel, who served Temple Emeth from 1960 to 1992. It is now my pleasure to call upon Kol Emet under the direction of Carol Shansky to lead us all in singing Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
We turn now in our Siddurim to page 124. On page 124, in the middle of the page, we find a reading about the purpose of the synagogue. As we celebrate 75 years as a congregation, it seemed like a very appropriate reading to begin our worship this evening. I invite you to read with me. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. We continue now on page 144, page 144, with the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברח גדותי ימליך מלכותי, וחי כאן דיומי כאן, וחיי תכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן, ישמד רבה
146. We read together in Hebrew on page 148. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, u'bitvuna meshaneh itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'misader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzonim, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, b'choshech mipnei or, Uma'avir yom mevi laila, uma'avdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tsebaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws, and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
The melody that we will use for Shema this evening is by Israeli singer-songwriter Tzvika Pick. Having died only this past August, his melodic and singable Shema became a staple in Reform camps and synagogues. We join together in singing Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Please be seated. We join together in Ve'ahavta on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha
b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha uvlechtecha b'derech uvshokbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kiddushim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'hiot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. We turn to page 157 and we read together in English at the top of the page. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. We read in English on page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeis sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
As we look to page 162, this traditional melody is based on a Hasidic tune. It has become overwhelmingly popular in Reform and conservative synagogues everywhere. What makes it special as part of the history of Temple Emeth is Rabbi Siegel. Already retired when I arrived, Rabbi Siegel would sit in the congregation with Mimi and his family almost every Shabbat. He always sang along with me on Yisbechu, which he later told me was one of his favorite melodies both to sing and to play on clarinet. He was most pleased with the tempo at which I sang the piece. He told me that so many cantors sing the piece either too fast or too slow, missing the Hasidic roots and essence of the melody. Since I had grown up singing the piece at this tempo, I may not have appreciated the nuance, but I certainly appreciated bonding over music with Rabbi Siegel.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישבעו ויתרמו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת. והשני רצית בו וקידשתו שבת, חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עוני שבת.
We continue now with the tefillah found in the Siddur on page 164. Please rise if you are able for the tefillah.
Adonai, sefatai tiftachu fi agiti latecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Akol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ava, Melech Ozer u'Mashiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Bezrat Sarah, atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atarav le'oshia, Mashiv haruach u'marit haGashem, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech hanoflim v'roper cholim, Umatir basurim, Umikayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bar gvurot, Umidom halach, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei akol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kdoshim b'chol yom yahlu chasela, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el hakol.
seated. We turn down the Siddur to page 177. We read together at the top of the page, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Ben Steinberg is truly one of the greats. His music, which became popular from the early 60s on, is at once challenging and easily sung, cantorial and congregational. I was so blessed as a very young cantor to work with Mr. Steinberg as our composer in residence in 1996. I will always remember how hard our choir worked and how we brought in a small orchestra, including a harp, to accompany me and the choir right here on this bima. As I sing the most well-loved of Steinberg's compositions, the thing I will remember the most are the members of our choir who are no longer with us, whose voices echo in every note of Shalom Rav. I ask you to join me on page 178.
Shalom, Rav Yisrael, Tasim, Le'olam. Shalom, Rav Yisrael, Tasim.
Take a moment now for Tefillat Halev, the opportunity to offer to God the prayer of our hearts. Inspirational readings for this time are found on pages 180 and 181. tonight to enable us more time to celebrate, well, ourselves, really. But one of the most cherished parts of the Torah service is the opportunity to offer a prayer for healing. And so we're not going to skip that. We will turn at this time to page 371 for a prayer for healing. If you are thinking of someone in need of healing and you are watching us on live stream, I invite you to enter the name of your loved one in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. And here in the sanctuary, I apologize that we have technical difficulties with the monitor in the corner of the sanctuary, so we will not be able to scroll the names of all of our temple loved ones in need of healing, but we will take them into our hearts, and I invite any of you here in the sanctuary to share the name of someone you are thinking of in need of healing out loud or in your heart. We take them all into our hearts as we pray for healing. We turn to page 371 as we join together in the Mishaberach. Well, let me start by saying Mazel Tov. It takes a lot for a congregation to make it for 75 years, and we've done it. Mazel Tov to us. And as we celebrate our congregation, I'd like to reflect on the impact of Temple Emeth. One way to evaluate the impact of a congregation is to see how many people participate in our programming. So I'm going to name some programs. Please rise and remain standing if the following refer to you. Let's begin with travel. Please rise if you have been on a temple trip abroad, whether it has been to Israel, Spain, or another foreign country, and remain standing. Please rise if you have been on an overnight domestic trip, like to Alabama, or if you have participated in the Religious Action Center trip to Washington, D.C. Please rise if you have represented the temple at a URJ biennial convention. Please rise if you have been to an adult Kala, either at Eisner Camp in the old days, or thankfully, before I got here, we moved the Kala to the Pearl River Hilton. Either way, rise if you've been to one of those. Please rise if you've been on a day trip, like to Philadelphia, or Eatontown, or a museum, or a theater performance with our group in New York City. I believe congregational travel can be transformative, and it also inspires an ongoing connection. And so the fact that all of you have engaged in travel in one way or another is amazing. Thank you. You may be seated. but many of you will be standing up again as I keep going. Another way to evaluate the impact of a congregation is through life cycle events. Please rise and remain standing if you were confirmed at Temple Emeth. Please rise if you became bar or bat mitzvah here at Temple Emeth. Please rise if your child became bar or bat mitzvah or was confirmed here. Please rise if your grandchild became bar or bat mitzvah or was confirmed here. Please rise if the clergy of Temple Emeth officiated at your wedding or the wedding of your children. Please rise if the clergy of Temple Emeth officiated at the funeral or unveiling of a close relative. When a congregation is part of the sacred moments in a family's life, it inspires an ongoing connection. Please be seated. Whenever I've spoken with an outsider familiar with our congregation, it is common for them to speak highly of our lay leadership. Please rise and remain standing if you have served as a president of Temple Emeth. Please rise if you have served as an officer of the temple. Please rise if you have served as a committee chair. Please rise if you have served on a committee. Or, when the work seems inappropriate for a committee, we name a task force. Please rise if you have served on a task force. Once someone has invested their time for the good of the temple, they tend to continue supporting the temple even after they no longer have a title. And the fact that so many of you are here is testament to that. Thank you. You may be seated. Next, let's talk about education. Please rise and remain standing if you attended religious school here. Please rise if you participated in our youth programming, including Senior League, as it was called for decades, Junior Youth Group, Barge, MF Teen Community, GIFTY, as it was called for decades and is now known as Nifty Gur, URJ Summer Camp, or Nifty in Israel. Please rise and remain standing if you have participated in adult education by coming to a Trachtenberg lecture, the Rabbi Louis J. Siegel Scholar in Residence Weekend, a B'Yachad breakfast. I have a whole good list. It doesn't matter if you're all standing in. A Viewpoints event, a One Book, One Community, or its newest iteration, One Book, One Synagogue Shabbaton, a mini university class, a Sunday special, or a Renaissance program. Synagogue education seeks to integrate the spiritual and the intellectual in a way that other venues cannot. It is what makes educational programming a formative experience at any age. You may be seated. Finally, let's talk about the arts. Please rise and remain standing if you have worked as cast or crew on any of our 3 productions, Fiddler on the Roof, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, or A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Please rise if you have sung in any of our choirs, Kol Emet, Shir Chadash, or Mea Achuz, as it was called in the early days, or Eitz Chaim, our junior choir. Please rise if you have played in the Temple Emeth Band, known affectionately as Black Shabbat. And please rise if you came to an artist program such as Mordecai Rosenstein, Jonatas da Silva, who built that tent in the social hall, or the Make Your Own Golem program that we did on Zoom early in the pandemic. Following in the tradition of Miriam, who led the women in singing and dancing, and Betzalel, who designed the tabernacle, it is in our nature as Jews to connect with God and our tradition through the arts. Thank you. You may be seated. The activities and programming I just spoke about was primarily by us, for us, and located in this building. I would like now to speak for a moment about all the ways this congregation has been a leader in the community. I think of the times that our junior choir, Eitz Chaim, has sung at interfaith gatherings, or the Teaneck Yom HaShoah observance, or during Hanukkah at Hackensack and Holy Name Medical Centers. We have sent delegations large and small to the Religious Action Center to work on state and federal issues. I think of the times we've opened our doors to host adult choir festivals, junior choir festivals, URJ regional events, interfaith seders, sweet tastes of Torah, JCRC candidates forums, and Martin Luther King birthday celebrations. Our members have donated and sorted tons of food, literally, and donated it to the Center for Food Action at the High Holy Days. Our volunteers have given their time to beautifying the area across Windsor Road, to serving meals at the walk-in dinner in Hackensack, and to preparing meals or sleeping overnight at the Family Promise Shelter. Each of our rabbis has devoted some of his time to the community. I think of Rabbi Trachtenberg, who, after he went on a fact-finding mission to Israel for the URJ in 1952, continued his involvement in the labor Zionist movement. I think of Rabbi Siegel, whose interpretation of Torah compelled him to speak in favor of school desegregation here in Teaneck in the 1960s. And I think of Rabbi Gervis and his commitment to our movement's summer camps. We have nurtured relationships with other Reform congregations, participating in collaborative worship services on festivals, on Tisha B'Av, and on other occasions. We are represented on the Jewish Community Council of Greater Teaneck, and we have a partnership with our neighbors across the parking lot at the Teaneck Mikveh Association. And this congregation has given back to the Jewish people in the form of talented Jewish professionals who have worked as clergy, as Federation executives, as URJ staff, as administrators in other synagogues, as nursery school directors, religious school teachers, and Hebrew tutors. This temple even produced a chairman of the board of the URJ, the highest volunteer position in the Reform movement, which was held by Charles Rothschild Jr., a former Temple Emeth president. In 75 years, we've gained a reputation. Really, we have earned a reputation as a congregation that nurtures its diverse membership and reaches out in the spirit of Tikkun Olam to other organizations, Jewish and non-Jewish. We should take pride in what we've done and seek ways to expand and diversify our work, for it is essential to who we are and who we strive to be. It is now my pleasure to call upon Laura and Daniel Kirsch, who are both past presidents of the Temple and who serve as co-chairs of our 75th anniversary committee, to share their perspective of what makes our temple special after their nearly 50 years of temple membership.
We tossed a coin, I lost, I go first. It wasn't only Teaneck that attracted the Jews moving out from New York City across the George Washington Bridge in the early 1940s. Some of us moved to Hackensack on what we now call the West Bank of the Hackensack River. And my family was one of those. My mother still taught in New York City, but my father opened a dress shop on Main Street in Hackensack, not that far from the only kosher butcher around, which I think was also located in Hackensack. My family then was not part of a Reform synagogue at all, or the Reform community. We were what I would call then a traditional conservative family. My grandmother lived with us. She was a refugee from the area that is now, we're not entirely sure, but you could call it the Ukraine area, and was afraid of pogroms. And when we moved to Hackensack, we did not put a mezuzah on our door because she was afraid the neighbors would see it and come and kill us. We've come a long way since then, thank goodness. It was a traditional conservative household. We kept kosher. We had 2 sets of dishes, and in the house we kept kosher. We did not when we ate outside the house, which led to the comment that when we died, our dishes would go to heaven. We also did not drive to shul on the high holidays. We drove to a few blocks away so we could walk the difference. I see that as a familiar comment for many of you, yes. But those were then, and then we moved back to the city. Laura and I were married, we lived in the city, had 3 daughters in the city, and then we moved back to Hackensack, where we were visited by representatives of the shul I grew up in, the Hackensack Hebrew Institute. Now, I grew up there, and to say I had fond memories would be somewhat of an overstatement. It was the typical situation where we went to Hebrew school, and boys went through a bar mitzvah, girls did not. As many of you know, I do not sing well, if at all. And in fact, I'm so bad that for my bar mitzvah, my father was told that we had to have voice lessons for me so that my voice would not be objectionable to the congregation when I chanted the Haftarah. This did not stop us, which should not come as a surprise to any of you that know us. So when Laura and I and our family of 3 daughters moved back to Hackensack, and we were visited by a delegation from the Hackensack Hebrew Institute, now Temple Emeth, in Hackensack, I was not inclined to be kindly towards them, particularly since they had no regard whatsoever for the fact that my wife was actually a human being, a person, a Jew, and a participant. And it was very clear that we thanked them for their visit and told them we'd get back to them. And if you know the concept of Shalom Bayit, it was very clear that if we joined that synagogue, there was no Shalom going to be in our Bayit ever after. Having let that as the background, I turn it over to Laura for the next stage of our journey.
I did grow up in a Reformed congregation, and my dad, a president, past president there, was active in UAHC, now URJ, and he actually, when we moved out here, the rabbi of our congregation that had married us, where my father and my mother still belonged, had recommended that we come to Rabbi Siegel's congregation in Teaneck. Rabbi Frischman and Rabbi Siegel were good friends and knew each other well, and the rabbi told my father that was the only place really that Laura and Dan belonged. My dad was at a UAHC board meeting and happened to be sitting next to Chuck Rothschild, as the rabbi mentioned, chairman of the board at that point and past president of this congregation. And he said, "Oh, you're from Teaneck, right? My kids just moved to Hackensack." 5 minutes later, literally 5 minutes later, we got a call from Ann and Ken Rosenthal on the membership committee at Temple Emeth, who asked if they could come and meet with us and tell us about Temple Emeth. The rest is history. They came, they were warm, they were wonderful, they were welcoming. We did join the temple. Ann encouraged me to become active, which I did. And slowly, the temple became our home away from home. With 3 girls in religious school, with different schedules, I ended up here practically every day. And I helped out, since I was here, I helped out in the office. And in those days, before computers, before copy machines, when we sent out mailings, we used a mimeograph machine, if any of you remember those, with the stencil and the crank and the yes. And to address the envelopes, we had this monster machine called an addressograph, which sent individual plates with members' addresses on a conveyor belt through the machine, which imprinted the envelopes. This machine constantly jammed. I became a addressograph mechanic. And I would get calls periodically, "Laura, can you please come and unjam the addressograph? We need to get a mailing That was the beginning. Both of us became more active. We served on committees. We both shared committees. We've met some really wonderful people and made some really, really dear friends. We're privileged, I'm certainly privileged to have served as a president of this congregation. I was blessed with a wonderful executive board, many of whom have gone on to serve as presidents of the congregation as well. I was very grateful to have the opportunity to study with Rabbi Siegel, to study text. And I greatly enjoyed working with and occasionally having lunch with Cantor Tillum during my tenure as president. Some of our best memories, celebrating with our Temple family, our family and friends, our daughters' bat mitzvahs, confirmations, and our eldest daughter's wedding in this sanctuary with the reception in the social hall. And throughout our time as members, the congregation has remained a very warm and welcoming place as it continued to grow and change with the times. As I said, we've been here almost 50 years, and the congregation has gone through a lot of changes and has always risen to the challenge and moved ahead. And as we moved ahead, we've still retained our commitment to social action and human rights. For example, we hired a bus and we went into New York to support a HIAS rally for refugees. 23 brave souls, and I mean brave souls, with our raincoats and our umbrellas, braved the pouring rain in Battery Park City to meet with Jews from congregations all over the metropolitan area in support of the movement for refugees. It's part of our fabric. It's who we are. It's who we will continue to be. But the best part of it, certainly for me, has always been the feeling of community, of family and belonging. It's committed membership who have done and continue to do the hard work, and the leadership of our wonderful clergy whom we have been fortunate to have over the years. Here's to the next 75 years, at least, and may we continue to grow from strength to strength.
Oh, you think we're done? You think
No,
we're done?
we're not.
Strength to strength usually means the end.
I know.
Besides, we were only allowed 7 minutes.
And we take,
We've probably gone over time,
right. But
talk fast.
I've learned that when you're old, they don't stop you because they'd have to shoot you, and they don't want to be having to deal with the funeral and all the paperwork. So it's just it's easier to let us talk. I just wanted to touch on a little bit of what Laura alluded to in terms of the changes over the years that we have seen at Temple Emeth. And when I say I grew up in a conservative household, you can imagine the shock and surprise of walking into a Reformed service for the first time. But I will share with you that many of you today would have that same shock if you walked into the service that we found back in 1970. And I'm not just referring to the TVs and the video and the internet. First of all, the book was in English. It was the old Union Prayer Book. There was no Hebrew in the service, or very, very little. Maybe we said the Shema, but that would be about it. And the Baruch Hu. Yeah, but that was about it. There was an organ. There was an organ over there, which fortunately during her term of office, Lori got rid of, and now we have room for a choir. But none of that happened without some controversy over the years. And the changes in the prayer book, as we went along, did not always go smoothly. We had meetings, ritual committee meetings, we had congregational meetings, and at least in one case, after we voted to adopt the latest prayer book by the that came out from the CCR, we had to have a recall election. Does that sound familiar these days, right? We had a whole new election because a substantial number of our influential congregants were very upset at the direction we were going away from the old Union prayer book and the tradition of reform. I will say that coming up, one of the other things that's an innovation, I look at our cantor, the concept of having a woman as the cantor was a dramatic change. And I'm going to tell you a story that she's never heard.
This could be anything.
Because I was on the committee that interviewed and ultimately hired, was responsible for hiring Cantor Tillman when she was about 14 years old. And many people in the congregation and on the committee were using the euphemism of, well, she's so young, by which they meant, but she's a woman. And they wouldn't say that, just as today many people don't say that, but they say she's so young. And, there was a legitimate concern about whether she would be strong enough to handle being one of the first women to act as a cantor for a congregation in this area, and particularly our congregation. So now here's the story. We had the interview process, and part of the interview process was the committee acted as the choir with you as the director.
I remember.
Do you remember this? And I was part of the committee. I told you, and you know this, I can't sing at all. So I'm sitting there, and Cantor is saying, okay, words that mean nothing to me. Alto's there, soprano's there, bass is there, whatever. And I say, I can't sing. What do I do? And she very politely said, shut up, sit over there, and move on. And I knew she could handle it. And of course, I was right. And the rest is history, and fortunately for all of us, a good history. And I would just be a little bit remiss if I didn't conclude by talking about mentioning a recent email that we all got about the financial issues and the direction of Temple Emeth. And I will just tell you from my experience, every president has in his pocket a speech that's entitled "The Current Financial Crisis at Temple Emeth."
And the roof is leaking.
And the roof is leaking. I have never been on the board when we didn't have a meeting to discuss leaking roofs. But we've all gone through that. And I remember when we had our 36th anniversary, and Rabbi Siegel came up with a brilliant idea of starting an endowment fund and calling it after the 36 righteous people who support the world in Jewish tradition. And we formed our 36th anniversary committee. We sent out the letter, and by return mail, we got about $8,000 in cash and a letter signed by 20 or 30 congregants, including some past presidents. How dare we equate righteousness with giving? But we persevered. We now have an endowment foundation that's stable and supportive. And so I'm going to say one of the advantages of having been president was I always thought it was important to be at services, so I got to hear Rabbi Siegel for essentially 2 years. And my favorite Torah character is Caleb, and I will share why. Because the text says of the spies, you don't know the story of the spies, I'm not going to have to go through it, but Caleb and Joshua came back and said, yeah, let's go, we can do this, right? Everybody knows why Joshua, but why Caleb? And there's a reference in the text that Caleb took a side trip on the way. And the rabbis say it's because he visited his ancestor's tomb. And be like Caleb. We're here today, we're celebrating 75 years, but we're also looking to the future, into the promised land, the next 75 years. The future will be bright if we have that strength to keep faith with our past move comfortably together into the future.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Now you will.
Thank you, Dan and Laura, for sharing those memories, for the reflections on how we as a congregation have evolved and grown, and some of the things that we have to be so proud of. I'll tell you one other thing. I mean, at the risk of being immodest. There are not a lot of congregations in Bergen County or anywhere else who have a cantor who has served for 29 years. It's 28 and a half, but 29 mark is on the horizon. Nor are there a lot of congregations in Bergen County or elsewhere who've had a rabbi serve for 20 years. Okay, I'm at 19 and a half, but I see it there. And even rarer is to have a cantor nearing 29 and a rabbi nearing 20 in the same congregation. And that says a lot about you. It says something about how hard we work and the fact that we're highly trained professionals, which is a phrase I love to say.
And I'll be the cantor and you be the rabbi.
But it really says more about this congregation and the faith that you place in us and the respect that you have for our leadership and the commitment that we have together to make this congregation a wonderful place. So I want to say thank you and Yasher Koach on this achievement as part of our 75 years.
Yasher Koach.
In a moment, Cantor Tillam will sing a song entitled Baruch Haba, composed by Yaakov Bergman. The song includes the words of Psalm 118 and means, "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Eternal. We bless you from the house of the Eternal." Yaakov Bergman was born in Israel and raised on a kibbutz. It would have been so perfect if he was born in 1947, right? He was born in 1945, so close. His early musical training began with violin studies, but he soon expressed an avid interest in composing and conducting. He graduated from the Reuben Academy of the Hebrew University, Jerusalem, with majors in conducting and composition. Bergman is the music director now of the Walla Walla Symphony and the Portland Symphony Orchestra. I requested this song because for many years it was part of our installation of officers and trustees ceremony in the spring. Like so many other things, the timing and format of that service has changed over the years. But this song is a reminder of our synagogue as a place of welcome and the important role that lay leadership has in making this congregation strong. We continue now with Baruch Haba.
Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, Be'er
service continues now with the Aleinu found in your Siddur on page 586 at the bottom of the page. Please rise if you are able for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teiknu l'aliotzer b'reishit, shelo asar k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'gar aleinu k'chol amana, v'anachnu kore'im, u'mishtachavim u'modim, l'knei melech, malachei hamalachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'nehar Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu v'yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Please be seated. In 75 years, we have endured our share of losses. Like every congregation, we have buried our parents and grandparents, and on occasion have had to bury our sons and daughters. We mourned when President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963 and Prime Minister Rabin in 1995. We mourned when the Jewish people were the victims of senseless acts of terrorism, as in Munich in 1972 and Pittsburgh in 2018, and countless times in Israel and around the globe. We have used this loss as an opportunity to praise God's name. In 75 years, we have mounted hundreds of memorial plaques on the walls of our sanctuary. Their names visible in perpetuity, we say of them, Aleichem Shalom, may peace be upon them. We've said goodbye to two beloved and influential rabbis, Rabbi Joshua Trachtenberg, who died in 1959 at age 55, and Rabbi Louis J. Siegel, who died in 2005 at the age of 81. At tonight's service especially, we are grateful to be the inheritors of their legacy. The Kaddish turns our thoughts to the past, but reciting it gives us comfort and courage to face the future. On this special occasion, may the words of the Kaddish fill this room and resonate in our hearts. This Shabbat, we remember those for whom we are in the Shloshim 30-day period of mourning: Sharon Ann Bernstein, sister of Sheldon Bernstein; Gail Packles Dallas, sister of Stephen Packles and Arlene Packles; Johanna Sturm, a member of Temple Emeth, wife of George Sturm and mother of Max Sturm; Edith Sairuli, a member of Temple Emeth; Eva Benamy, friend of Rachel Kugelmass and David Levin; and Michael Parson, friend of Elise Balzer. We remember as well those whose yard sites occurred this week: Arthur Adler, Emil Ahrensberg, Otto Becker, Edith Birchman, Howard K. Davis, Maddie Fetter, Louis Freed, Phyllis Friedman, Leo Goodman, Philip Grossman, Lou Hirsch, Charles Jean Hirsch, Hank Hirschman, Elaine Ingberman, Beverly Jacobson, Jean Kapp, Stephen Conover, Louis Kleinkopf, Theodore Cohen, Sharon Kramer, Milton Marks, Lena Mate, Richard Nussbaum, Joseph Salloway, Josephine S. Sanders, Judith Ida Siegel, Minnie Shapiro, Joseph Sturman, Morris Sweedlow, Edith Tillum, Phoebe Toder, Simon Trachtenberg, Nat Weinberg, Dorothy S. Williams, and Morris Young. We remember the names of 6 of the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust: Mina Bombas of Poland, age 7, Mimi Bach of Czechoslovakia, age 15, Rachel Bach of Belgium, age 13, Hertha Bos of the Netherlands, age 14, Feva Borecki of Poland, age 16, and Tauba Bornstein of Poland, age 12. We remember them all. We take them into our hearts with our own as we turn now to page 598. Please rise if you are able for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divrach yutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'yizman karim v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'rechu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. It is my pleasure at this time to call upon Rachel Kugelmass, a member of our Board of Trustees, to offer Shabbat greetings and announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Shabbat Evening Service and 75th Anniversary Celebration. Hanukkah starts this Sunday evening, December 18th. I hope you'll join our religious school students and Rabbi Serbiu for a holiday celebration in the sanctuary on Wednesday, December 21st at 5:30 p.m. The gathering will include songs and a story, and it will also be shown on the live stream. Hanukkah continues throughout the week, and Temple members are invited to bring their personal Chanukiot to Shabbat evening services and light them on the Bima next Friday night, December 23rd. After services, we'll enjoy a special Hanukkah-themed oneg with, what else? Donuts. I hope you'll join us for this special holiday event. For the last Shabbat of 2022, we'll break with our Friday and Saturday routines. Friday night, December 30th, we'll have a Kabbalat Shabbat service on Zoom only, starting at 6 p.m. On Saturday, December 31st, our Shabbat morning service will start at 10:30 a.m. in person and on Zoom in the museum. Our annual One Book, One Synagogue Shabbaton on the themes of the Book of Lost Names returns on Saturday, January 7th. We'll begin at 9 a.m. with a Torah study session on the biblical characters with multiple names, followed at 10:30 with a Shabbat service that includes the themes of the book. At noon, we'll enjoy a festive lunch, followed by a screening of Valiant Hearts, a 2021 French film about 6 children who hide in a castle during World War II. The program is free, but reservations are required to attend the lunch. Thank you to this evening's volunteers in the live stream control room. Marcia and Morris Sobel are at the controls tonight, dealing with all of those technical difficulties, poor things. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I mentioned in the introduction that our celebration does not end with the conclusion of our service. Here are 4 things to notice and participate in. First, when you enter the social hall, you will see that it looks fabulous, with specially chosen tablecloths and centerpieces. On the left side as you enter, there's a photo booth, some shimmery, not sure what you call it, streamers, which are meant to be a photo booth for us so that you can pose for a selfie and commemorate this moment of 75 years of Temple Emeth. The festive appearance of the room is thanks to Pam Edson, who put it all together with a modest budget and an eye for style. When you're finished marveling at the decorations, then direct your attention to the food table, where you will see that several members have baked for this evening's Oneg Shabbat. I felt like an occasion like this one requires a sheet cake, but really, the highlight of the Oneg table is the homemade contributions of our members. They were coordinated by Gail Turner, so I'd like to thank Gail and the following contributors: Barbara Balkin, Mark Chelmer, Rachel and Mike Eastman, Michael Goldberg, Arnie Graber, Pauline Hecht, Jill Cantor, Sue Kirsch, Rachel Kugelmass, Sharon Schubert, Marilyn Shapiro, Stephanie Stokes, and Andrea Winters. I apologize if anyone was omitted. Rest assured, I appreciate it even if my waistline does not. Next, on a table in the corner of the social hall are about 20 books from the collection of the Rabbi Joshua Trachtenberg Memorial Library. They were selected and displayed by Library Committee Chairs Terry Binder and Marion Wolf to show the wide variety of guest speakers we have had here over the years. Each book has a card next to it indicating when the author or editor spoke at Temple Emeth. And I will add that this is the first, but not the last, special library display for our 75th anniversary. In early 2023, we are planning a second display to highlight the books published by Temple members, and there are many. Thank you to Terry and Marion. And before you leave tonight, be sure to stop in our museum and see the archival photos put on display by Barbara Balkin. There are photos of our leadership, our trips, and other activities, and the highlight for many will be before and after photos of Cantor Tillum and of me. Before and after what, you may ask, is another question. Cantor, we've aged well. I think we've aged well, but they will judge. They will judge for themselves when they see our photos in the museum. It is impressive how much we have done in 75 years, and that Barbara and the photographers who preceded her were able to capture it. I'd like to offer greetings on behalf of our Temple president, Michael Robinson. Michael so wanted to be here this evening, but his wife Marcia is recovering from a surgical procedure earlier this week, and like the devoted husband he is spending the evening at home with her. I'd like to thank Dan and Laura Hirsch for sharing their reflections on Temple Emeth. Their membership spans almost 2/3 of the Temple's history, and we would not have made it for 75 years were it not for the devotion of many people like Dan and Laura. Thank you, Cantor Tillum, accompanied by Tom Mustachio, illustrating how music has shaped the spiritual life of this congregation over the decades. Cantor, you did so well, I'm giving you the next 5 weeks off. Finally, I would like to thank Temple Emeth for preparing the opening Shabbat Shalom and for preparing our closing songs. Hanukkah is just 2 days away, and though it is too early to light candles, it is not too early to get in the Hanukkah spirit with a couple of Hanukkah songs. So I invite you to join in 2 festival favorites. The first is Maoz Tzur, found in Mishkan Tefillah on page 669. Then we will hear O Hanukkah in Yiddish on page 670, and then flip back to the English on page 669. We turn now to Temple Emeth for our Hanukkah music.
Tikon Beit Tefillah.
We have reached the end of our service. If you've been watching us on live stream, it's your last chance to post something in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform, perhaps a Yasher Koach to Temple Emeth, or a thank you to Dan and Laura Kirsch for sharing their reflections. For those of us here in the sanctuary, I invite you, if you are able, to rise for our final benediction. We came to this place to honor what has happened in the last 75 years. But let us leave this place resolved to make the next 75 even stronger. We heard about the values that guided this holy congregation for 75 years, values like community, leadership, and education. Let us now recommit to those values as we look to a future where the only certainty is change. Let us understand that our celebration is because of the hard work of others and that we benefit from the fruit of their labors. Let us now plant seeds for the next generation, as it says in the Talmud, "As my ancestors planted for me, I shall plant for my children." May we go out in peace, may we return in peace, and may all our endeavors be blessed. And let us say, Amen. We turn to one another and say, Shabbat Shalom.